Yet Qing was considered the trash of society, born with a level of 0 in a world overrun by bloodthirsty demons. Unable to deal with even a small demon beast, he survived by scavenging the pitiful scraps in dark alleys. One day, a huge wolf attacked him, and Ye Qing realized that even if he lived like trash, he would not die like trash. Then he dealt a fatal blow to the wolf spirit, and it completely changed his miserable life. Ye Qing worked as a senior abyssal scavenger in the gloomy city of Ji, and every day he collected the remains of rewards from fierce battles with monsters. The management always threatened him with a harsh prison term for stealing valuable crystals, as one could cost as much as 50,000 yuan. But Ye Qin knew the strict rules well, and he had no intention of stealing anything, even at the risk of starvation. Only those who were stuck on level 0 became scavengers, and their lives were always hanging by a thread from mortal danger. The grueling work was paid a pittance, and Ye Qing had accumulated a huge debt of 500,000, so he had to work even harder. One day, a cunning colleague offered a dangerous job with a tempting salary of 3,000. And even knowing all the risks, the desperate Ye Qin agreed, despite the fact that death could await him on the mission. They were heading to the sinister trading center of Shanfen City, where a deadly Class A or B abyss lurked. The reward was fabulously high, but the danger was also mortally great, because it was necessary to take the equipment of the hunters who died in battle. Ye Qing bitterly recalled how it all began, how the familiar world changed overnight 10 years ago. The gates of the abyss suddenly opened, and defenseless people were confronted with terrible monsters that brought death. Only a special class of brave people could defeat these terrifying creatures, and Ye Qing dreamed of becoming one of them. After the first fateful victory, people discovered magical stones and mysterious weapons of unprecedented power. After this, the economy changed dramatically, and all funds went into desperate exploration of the mysterious and dangerous abyss. Poor Ye Qing had a measly level of 0, and was unable to pay the huge medical bills for his seriously ill sister. He was cruelly thrown out of his home due to his exorbitant debts, and found himself on the streets without a penny in his pocket. One day he was offered a dubious loan using his own organs as collateral, and out of complete desperation he agreed. The other garbage men also knew that Ye Qin had taken a huge loan of 1 million, and in desperation lost everything on the stock exchange, sinking further into debt. Now he could lose his kidney at any moment if he didn't pay off the debt, and this scared him to the point of shaking in his knees. Besides, the medical bills of his sick sister were truly astronomical, and were growing every day like a snowball. Everyone around thought that the unfortunate Ye Qin would die long before he could collect the huge sum needed. Finally, they reached the desired ominous abyss, and at the entrance Ye Qing promised himself to earn money and return alive. He entered the abyss of Class B for the first time, and his heart began to beat faster with horror and anticipation. Suddenly, a whole bunch of bloodthirsty wolf spirits furiously attacked a squad of experienced hunters. The seasoned hunters easily dealt with the first attackers, but Ye Qin understood that this was only the beginning. During the last expedition, the abyss had already changed its appearance. The first floor had become 3 times wider and higher, terrifying the scavengers. But experienced hunters knew that changing their shape was natural for the abyss, and this did not surprise them much. Suddenly looking around, Ye Qin accidentally touched one of the irritated hunters, and the latter began to strangle him in rage and threaten him with cruel reprisals. Only because of his haste did the enraged hunter let go of the frightened boy, leaving bruises on his neck. Ye Qing bitterly realized that the cruel society did not respect weaklings like him at all, considering them a burden. But no one guessed that he already had enough experience to promote from level 0 to level 1. Suddenly, a huge demon beast appeared near the group of scavengers, and everyone ran away in cowardice, leaving the defenseless Ye Qing alone to be torn apart. The frightened boy noticed that the monstrous monster had critically low health, and a desperate plan formed in his head. There was some battered equipment lying nearby, a wooden shield and a flimsy level 1 stick, but there was no choice. Ye Qin decided to take advantage of this one chance and entered into an unequal battle with the terrible monster. Despite his weakness, he somehow miraculously landed a blow, but the monster's health did not change since his damage was 0. The other scavengers laughed maliciously at the reckless guy, not knowing that he was actually planning to deal with the dangerous monster. Ye Qing, like the others, knew very well that with his pitiful equipment, he would not be able to penetrate the thick skin of even the weakest monsters. But he had one advantage. He knew his unenviable position very well and was ready for anything. He decided to use all his strength to try to compensate for his natural weakness. Meanwhile, the experienced combat group easily dealt with the rest of the bloodthirsty spirit wolves. The cowardly garbage men had been hiding behind their broad backs all this time, trembling with fear. The greedy hunters took the most expensive and valuable items, and carelessly entrusted the rest of the trash to be collected by scavengers. Suddenly, they heard a loud growl from the surviving beast, and one of the hunters immediately went to deal with the unexpected problem. At this tense moment, a huge wolf suddenly pounced on the defenseless Ye Qing and somehow managed to pierce its burning eye with a wooden stick, causing fatal damage to the beast. Suddenly, one of the astonished hunters appeared, amazed by the incredible victory of a guy with a pathetic 0 level. He mockingly warned that Ye Qin was still too weak and looked more like a desperate suicide. But the exhausted guy didn't care anymore. He did it for his cherished goal and wasn't going to back down. Once he reaches level 1, he can finally join the elite fighting group and change his miserable fate. To gain valuable experience, it was necessary to find wounded monsters and finish them off, risking their lives every second. After years of desperately risking his life, Ye Qing finally achieved his cherished goal after overcoming all difficulties. His exhausted body suddenly glowed with a bright light, marking the long-awaited transition to the next level. The arrogant hunter laughed contemptuously when he saw that the boy had only reached the maximum level of a scavenger. The chance to increase his level from 0 came once in a lifetime, but even in this case he was unlucky. He rudely ordered Ye Qingyu to immediately clear out the dangerous area and return to his dirty work. After the arrogant hunter left, Ye Qing looked at himself sadly, not feeling much of a change, and not understanding whether the minimum level of a scavenger was really that insignificant and useless in this world. Suddenly, he noticed a strange flickering glow on the body of the defeated wolf monster, and suddenly the inscription appeared, "Recyclable waste, wolf spirit body." When he decided to send the huge body for processing, a terrible portal from the abyss suddenly opened. From there, the terrifying hands of a monster crawled out, instantly pulling the wolf's carcass into the portal. After finishing the processing, the tentacles suddenly handed him a shining skill card, Ghost Dash. In order to obtain this valuable skill, he was sorely lacking in agility, and Ye Qin, without thinking twice, decided to transfer all his meager points into agility, hoping for the best. Finally, he fulfilled all the conditions for obtaining the skill, and with bated breath received the coveted card. His exhausted body suddenly began to glow with a bright green light, but outwardly nothing about the hero changed. At that moment, the impatient hunters called out to him loudly, and he instinctively tried to run towards them, but his speed unexpectedly turned out to be truly lightning fast, and he crashed into the barrier at full speed. The stunned Ye Qing had no idea how to control his new skill, but as the skill slowly recharged, he was forced to return to his usual dirty work. Instead of the slain corpses of monsters, he now saw piles of material everywhere that he could recycle. Ye Qing was surprised to admit that being an abyssal scavenger wasn't as bad of a job as he had previously thought. After processing all the corpses he found, he suddenly noticed a strange pattern in the acquisition of skills. After the first successful processing, he unexpectedly received a powerful ghost rush. But since then, new abilities mysteriously did not appear, and the number of points became less and less, so he assumed that in order to obtain a new ability, it was necessary to process the corpse of another type of monster. Ye Qing barely managed to reach 111 precious points, and didn't know which vital skill to level up. After much deliberation, he decided to distribute points evenly among the various useful indicators. As a result, all of his basic skills received 20 points, making him a more versatile fighter. Meanwhile, the fearless hunters continued to fight fiercely with the remaining bloodthirsty wolves, and they only had 2 more fierce opponents left to defeat on this floor of the abyss. After a quick victory, they discussed in surprise why the pathetic garbage man remained in his worthless profession after reaching level 1. Most of the hidden jobs were completely useless and did not give any advantages in this cruel world, and the first level of a scavenger was still equal to a pathetic level 0, giving no special powers. But the busy hunters had no time to think about this for long, and they hastily set off to clear the remaining floors of the abyss. Finally, they met their main goal of this dangerous expedition and froze in horror, because in front of them lay the remains of the legendary captain of the elite hunting group, Falcon. He had turned into such a monstrously huge monster that he barely fit on this gigantic floor of the abyss. The strange thing was that the captain's mutilated corpse looked as if it had lain in the abyss for 10 whole years, although only 48 hours had passed. Moreover, during the entire grueling climb, they encountered only weak monsters, which seemed suspicious, because the famous captain of the Falcon was a B-plus class fighter who could not die so absurdly in this place. Suddenly, the faces of the seasoned hunters were distorted with indescribable horror, when they realized with horror that not only the usual demon beasts were lurking here, but something much more sinister. Everyone remembered the shocking news about 27 people who disappeared without a trace in this damned abyss, and a chill ran down their spines. Experienced hunters instantly prepared for a deadly battle, seeing the approach of a huge army of monsters, because it turned out that the harmless demon beasts were just bait to lure them into this insidious trap. Finally, they saw their main opponent, a giant demonic carnivorous plant of the A-class abyss. Suddenly, the entire hunting party of Sokol appeared, but now they turned into brainless, bloodthirsty zombies, and the former comrades began to furiously attack living hunters, not recognizing their friends. The naive Ye Qin continued to diligently process the corpses, unaware of the mortal danger looming over him. He received a modest achievement for processing 50 corpses, and the reward for his hard work was a very ordinary dagger, which left Ye Qing a little disappointed. But suddenly he heard a deafening noise and rumble coming from the upper floors of the abyss, and he instinctively felt that some unknown threat was rapidly approaching them. Ye Qing was horrified to see a bloodthirsty zombie running straight towards him at an unnatural speed. Since there was no way out, the guy had to gather all his courage to fight off the monster. He used his new evasion skill in a flash, and somehow managed to escape the zombie's death grip. Ye Qing was surprised to realize how much his combat skills had improved. But the bloodthirsty zombie was already dangerously close, and there were only a few seconds left before the next deadly blow. The cornered hero decided to test his newfound strength and bravely entered into an unequal battle. To his amazement, he was suddenly able to break through the seemingly impenetrable defense of his opponent. For the skill's competent use, the system generously rewarded him with a bonus, knowledge of the enemy's weaknesses, and Ye Qin instantly scanned the vile zombie, learning its secret weaknesses. It turned out that the monstrous monster was deathly afraid of fire, and its weak point was its flabby neck. So the weapon Ye Qing had recently obtained came in handy. He skillfully wounded the stunned monster, causing it to bleed profusely, and after a furious fight, the exhausted enemy was finally defeated. But the exhausted hero's hands were covered in poisonous slime from the rotting corpse of a zombie. But fortunately, Ye Qing suddenly discovered a useful skill to resist dangerous plant poisons. In addition, Ye Qin could process the new trash in the form of a zombie corpse, gaining the poison-resistance skill. The poison effect was converted into useful bonuses. He also got a toxic poison card, but thanks to his new ability, it didn't pose a threat. The hero decided to drink the poison, hoping for the best, and thanks to the processing of the poison became a healing effect that lasted for 10 minutes. Ye Qing also used the accumulated points to increase his intelligence level, and now he could see the weak points of demons, which gave him an advantage in battle. After finishing his preparations, the boy turned around and saw a horde of zombies approaching, and he knew there were too many of them, and for a second, he thought about running away. But remembering all the words that were called to him, he realized that he had no right to give up, and Ye Qin used the ability of the scavenger to the maximum. Meanwhile, the battle of the battle group was raging with renewed vigor, because even though the Falcon team was dead, it was still strong. Moreover, the carnivorous plant remained especially dangerous, having already managed to kill several of them. Of the entire group, only 2 survived. One was killed by a zombie, the other became a victim of a plant. The remaining ones decided to retreat, but Lao Chen used a subjugation spell on his comrade. He used his friend as a shield to hold off the zombies while Lao Chen himself escaped. While running away, he thought that he would not lose anything, because he had already managed to collect valuable items, and he only had to come up with an excuse why his entire team died. At this moment, he ran into Ye Qing, who was dissatisfied with the hunter's betrayal. Looking back, Lao Chen saw how many zombies this guy had defeated on his own, and although it was dangerous to attack, he knew that he couldn't leave Ye Qing alive, because he would tell about his betrayal. When Lao Chen attempted to attack Ye Qing to push him into the horde of monsters, his attack was blocked as the attack was reflected back towards the attacker himself. Ye Qing, disappointed in this man, decided to use the refining ability on him. The traitor began to be drawn into the portal, but the system reported that processing this garbage was impossible. This irritated Ye Qing, but he managed to steal the man's skills and obtained an upgrade to his refining skill, and he also gained the ability of a 3-minute Spellmaster experience. After activating the card, his entire body burst into flames, indicating that he had acquired the Flame Lord skill and had enough intelligence points to use it. Deciding to test the ability, he launched a fireball at the zombie horde. The fire was so strong that it destroyed the enemies and burned their corpses, which greatly disappointed the hero who planned to recycle them. While he was looking at the result, another zombie snuck up on him, but Ye Qing dodged it, and at that moment, the monster's robe flew off. He realized that it was the commander of the hunters who asked him to kill him so that he would not finally become a zombie. Ye Qing used the golden shield, another skill he had acquired in battle, to cut off his opponent's head. He decided to recycle the remains of the zombies so that the leader of the hunting party could find peace. In exchange, Ye Qin received a Dagger Master card, which granted mastery and immunity to piercing attacks. The events moved forward a day, where the traitor found himself being interrogated about a mission where he had to find the Sokol group and return their bodies. If they fail to deliver the bodies, the mission will fail, and they will not receive the reward. But Lao Chen claimed to have found the remains of the Falcon group, but they had already been processed by a stranger. No one believed Lao Chen, because he was the only survivor, and no one else left the abyss. But it was also strange that his level dropped to the first, which had never happened before. Lao Chen explained that the man who destroyed the dungeon monsters had reworked his abilities, because he was a scavenger. But even Lao Chen himself began to doubt the reality of what had happened, because the guy was too strong. And apparently the Abyss Committee also doubted the veracity of his testimony, because the man had a high level of pollution from the energy of the abyss, which could cause hallucinations. Ye Qin, meanwhile, was heading towards the entrance of the B-class abyss because he wanted to make money, and after what happened, he sold all the magic crystals from the abyss to the black market. But he received only 30% of the cost, because the crystal business was monopolized, and private transactions were considered illegal and punishable by law, which is why the percentage was higher. But Ye Qing was more worried about the fact that he had used the refining ability in front of Lao Chen, and he was afraid that Lao Chen might report his ability. At this point, those gathered were informed that the next abyss would be fraught with many risks, as she had not been studied, so the reward was doubled. The person in charge of recruiting hunters asked for the combat-ready hunters to come to him, and Ye Qing asked if he was suitable for the quest with his first level as a scavenger. But the man laughed and began to humiliate him, which was Ye Qin's goal, because he wanted to confuse everyone and sneak in at the end of the squad, because only then would no one notice how he began to process the corpses of monsters. But Liu Xingran appeared and ordered Ye Qing to be released, and insisted that he participate in clearing the abyss. The others explained that the guy was at level 1 and couldn't do anything, but she insisted that he stay at least for the sake of the number of warriors. In the end, everyone agreed, since she had the final say, and Ye Qin was glad that he was not expelled as useless. Looking at the girl, he realized that she looked familiar. He finally remembered how he worked as a scavenger during her hunt, and then he took Liu Xingran's prey by killing the demon bear. He was glad that he had struck the first blow in his life and gained experience. Then the shocked Liu Xingran realized that this strange guy was trying to raise his level in this way. She was surprised that someone used this method of pumping, and she explained that it was risky, and next time he might not be so lucky. But Ye Qin was confident in himself, because he had no choice to give up, because unlike him, Xingran was lucky with her profession, and she did not know how others survived. The girl explained that life is not easy for her either, and that is why she is trying with all her might to become stronger. Her goal was to become the #1 hunter, while Ye Qing wanted to become stronger and protect his family. The girl invited Ye Qing to join her team if he changed his profession. Ye Qin agreed, but asked to be given freedom of action in the future. They were interrupted by bodyguards who began to pull the girl out of the abyss, but she managed to throw the crystal to the guy, Ye Qing's first reward for winning in the abyss. It was time to go into the abyss, and Ye Qing promised to be useful to the team and not interfere with the others in completing their tasks. In addition, after emerging from the previous abyss, he mastered many skills, and now he had a golden shield, dagger mastery, berserker ability, and other skills. Now he could choose any profession and become the perfect hunter, evenly distributing points between 6 characteristics. This leap in ability was not surprising, considering he had reworked everything in the previous abyss. But Ye Qing didn't understand what level corresponded to his points since his level wasn't increasing, so he used the all-seeing eye skill on his allies. He realized that the man had only 12 points of strength and 1 point of intelligence, while if the strength of an ordinary person was equal to 1 point, then the man was 12 times stronger, and therefore, Ye Qin was 100 times stronger than an ordinary person. But suddenly everyone turned to him, as the wall next to him began to collapse due to the activation of the trap. He awkwardly explained that the dungeon's design was changing, and to his luck, the hunters had a more interesting task than chasing the hero away. They found a chest of at least Class A, but there was no dagger master in the squad who could open it. Ye Qin volunteered to try and manage to break open the chest, arousing the suspicions of the others. He explained that as a scavenger he often found locked chests, which he was obliged to open. The hunters were surprised but wanted to move on to the next room of the abyss, but Ye Qin sensed something. He stopped the hunters and threw a stone, after which the walls began to move and the trap was triggered. Then the attention of the surroundings focused on Ye Qin again, but he explained that he had learned to detect traps while working. But even though everyone had defeated his abilities, he was still given a weak reward, a broken mace, and Ye Qing realized that everyone still considered him useless. Moving on, they found another reward, a stone tablet. Moreover, since this was the only reward, the hunters already wanted to go home. But the blood test began. Blood flowed from the cup, from which monsters were created. Ye Qin prepared to fight, but realizing that he couldn't reveal his strength, he put on a weakness ring that reduced his stats. When he first received this ring, it seemed useless, but now it has come in very handy. With one blow, he destroyed several blood spirits, although he only used 25% of his power. Liu Xingran, watching him, became interested in the guy, but was forced to enter into a fight herself. At this point, the monsters took on a more human form, becoming a bloody nightmare and exhibiting an unstable state. When entering battle, they imitated the enemy. Bloody Nightmare began to copy the hunter's movements, becoming stronger. The man who fought the Bloody Nightmare clearly underestimated him and was wounded. The monster was already raising its claw for a fatal blow, but Liu Xingran arrived in time and froze the beast, after which she scolded the hunter for his helplessness. Ye Qin, realizing that there was no time to waste, prepared a fire ability that could hit many monsters at once. The onlookers couldn't believe that a first-level scavenger had cast an S-class spell so quickly. But the guy didn't pay attention, because there were still many enemies ahead, so Ye Qing activated the Berserker state, receiving multiple enhancements. Even though he killed the opponents, they gathered into a huge monster called the King-level Bloody Nightmare. This monster was too strong for a B-class abyss, and looking at it, Ye Qing couldn't figure out who this monster was imitating. But rather, he realized that he himself had become an object for the imitation of this monster, and therefore could not defeat it. Seeing the doubt on the guy's face, Liu Xingran decided to help him. She moved quickly, freezing the monster's body parts, but even she didn't get the Bloody Nightmare easily. She realized that she was too weak against this monster and regretted coming here alone. When she was preparing to go into the abyss, she was told about the unstable energy of the abyss, but she agreed to go in order to conquer the highest level of the tower in the future. Her progress was far from the level of her older sisters and brothers, so she decided to go into this abyss to prove her strength. If she fails to deal with her current opponents, she will be unworthy of her family name and the title of God's chosen profession. Finally, Liu Xingran decided to use the Frost Flag skill, giving herself a speed bonus. Ice couldn't kill the monster, but it managed to delay it long enough for her to attack. Watching this fight, Ye Qing became curious. Who would be stronger, the C-class God's chosen job or the King-level Bloody Nightmare? When Liu Xingran finished her attack, she realized with horror that it was all in vain. The monster remained unharmed. The girl was overcome with rage, because despite being a C-class, her strength could not compare to her brothers and sisters, which is why she was constantly subjected to ridicule and criticism. The older relatives did not believe that someone like her could be their sister. Liu Xingran was passionate about becoming stronger, even if she had to start from the very bottom and the easy abysses. She was willing to challenge herself to overcome great difficulties and ordered no one to interfere with her fight. This idea was so strong that Liu Xingran miscalculated, and the monster pressed her with its power, and blood gushed out of her mouth. The others decided that the Bloody Nightmare had already killed the girl and suggested running away, but Ye Qin had no intention of doing so and pounced on the monster with a fire attack. At this moment, Liu Xingran showed that she was alive by escaping from the attack. She was surprised to see how an ordinary scavenger fought on equal terms with a strong monster. Ye Qin scanned the monster, but unfortunately he still couldn't find its weak spot. He understood that if he didn't kill the Bloody Nightmare now, it would become even stronger, completely immune to freezing, slowing down, and stopping. There was no point in holding back any longer, and Ye Qing activated all the characteristics at full power, angering the monster and starting to run away, leading it away from the other hunters. Everyone watched his fight, amazed at the strength of an ordinary scavenger. The hero continued to attack, realizing that the main thing was to notice the Bloody Nightmare's weak spot. But no matter how much Ye Qing exploded the monster's body parts, they grew back again, and no weak points were revealed. Suddenly, Ye Qin realized Bloody Nightmare was related to the stone tablet they found. He shouted to the team to hand over this artifact to him. After reaching the tablet, Ye Qing read the ancient writings thanks to his high intelligence. But before he could count the spell on the stone tablet, it fell into the monster's mouth, and it froze, going into invincible mode. This frightened everyone present. But suddenly Liu Xingran came over and asked if they knew Ye Qin. His face seemed familiar to her. Ye Qin reminded the girl of their meeting when he received his first experience point. Liu Xingran happily congratulated him on his change of profession. And looking at the simple garbage man with a difficult fate, I was amazed by his progress and risk-taking. But there was little time left for conversation, and Liu Xingran suggested freezing the monster to slow it down while Ye Qing looked for the tablet. Finally, the team created a long time ago reunited, deciding to act together. The rest of the hunters joined the fight, ready to fight to the end. Yachin explained, "They have 5 seconds before the monster goes into an invincible berserker mode. The next 30 seconds were going to be incredibly tough, but it was their only chance to survive." So turning to the others, the guy explained that they had to stand firm at any cost. His brave words inflamed the hunters' fighting spirit, and they received useful bonuses, including Liu Xingran, whose weakness disappeared and regeneration increased. Realizing that even a garbage man should not be underestimated, she ordered that the monster be closely monitored. When the bloody nightmare awakened, Liu Xingran ordered the mage to help Yeqing survive. The sorceress quickly bound the monster with magic while the hero prepared to attack. Yeqing looked at the enemy and realized that he couldn't destroy the tablet with a fireball, otherwise they would die, and he needed to act more delicately when attacking. He decided to extract the tablet directly from the monster's body, which was risky but worth the risk. Liu Xingran agreed, giving orders to the other participants, and prepared a frost flag to freeze the enemy for a short time. Yeqing was halfway to the monster, but the attacks were already hitting his body, although his regeneration dealt with them and quickly healed the wounds. But the hero knew that he lacked speed, so he entered a berserker state, applied an antidote, and drank a slowing potion. Gaining additional speed from the skill, Yeqin rushed towards the monster. But at the last moment, the monster noticed the movement and threw the hero back with force, and he crashed into the wall. Realizing that his moment of glory had passed, Yeqing became disillusioned, feeling like the same old garbage man. He decided to use the recycling ability on himself, as on garbage, but the system refused to recycle a living organism. Then he commanded the spell to throw it towards the monster. Thanks to this cunning plan, Yeqin was able to take the tablet and cast the spell. The monster began to burn before our eyes, and the players received a level increase. Everyone's level was raised except for Yeqing, whose maximum level as a scavenger did not allow him to gain experience points. He also couldn't use the dropped rewards due to his low level. Liu Xingran suggested that Yeqing, as the winner, distribute the rewards, which made him very embarrassed. But then he approached the girl and suggested that she act a little differently. At the same time, near the abyss, Liu Xingran's bodyguards reported the need for a rescue team to act. But she calmly went out with the hunters, explaining that there was no need for this. Journalists praised her, and bodyguards were glad that everything was okay with the lady. As it turned out, a few moments ago, Yeqin asked Liu Xingran for a favor. He wanted the girl to buy his equipment for 500 magic crystals. Moreover, she pretended that he was not there, and that the victory belonged exclusively to her. The girl agreed, feeling that she owed him, although Yeqin thought that it was beneficial for him. Left alone, Yeqin noticed a tiny monster near the sign. He understood that such a small monster would definitely be crushed by some inattentive hunter, which would be a very miserable death. So after offering him to become part of his power, he used absorption and successfully absorbed the bloody nightmare. As a reward, he received the ability Nightmare Body, which allows him to create a clone double that can imitate the owner and cause damage. Yeqing was happy that his work in the abyss was finally finished and dreamed of trying out his new ability. In a cafe near the dungeon, a guy was looking through the available equipment. Everything required a high level, which was too suspicious for a level 1 scavenger, and he needed to remain unnoticed in order to secretly sell the items. But even so, it would be difficult to sell equipment to a scavenger on the black market. Unexpectedly, Yeqing inadvertently reworked one of the new weapons and received 1 standard point in return. The system explained that the standard point is a universal unit after equipment decomposition, suitable for upgrading, repairing, and creating items. The system offered to repair the blade he fought with, and this turned out to be very convenient, because the guy wanted to say goodbye to it after the last fight. By repairing the blade, Yeqing also received a noticeable improvement in its durability, and now even almost destroyed weapons could be restored and made better. In addition, for the first upgrade, he received a recipe for a magic potion and upgrade bonuses. Yeqing understood that many hunters were worried about diving into the abyss because the hunter could not predict its depth and complexity. The unprepared often ran out of mana before finding the lair and had to return to replenish their supplies. Therefore, in the current reality, magic potion bottles became a key means of survival for groups, and their value spoke for itself. Now Yeqing could brew potions himself with a container and 6 points, so he asked the waiter for glasses and started recycling trash to get points. After creating various regeneration and enhancement potions, Yeqing drank the first one, and his mana, strength, and stamina increased. Having regained his strength, he went to clear another dungeon. As he walked out, Yeqing encountered men in tuxedos, debt collectors who were surprised by the hero's changed activity in recent days. They suspected that the boy had paid off the debt by finding the crystals in the trash or stealing them while working, but Yeqin demanded that they leave him alone, reminding him that he had paid off his debts in full. But they explained to him that even after the payment he was not free because of their unfinished contract. The collectors began to mock the guy, considering him an insignificant garbage man, and even decided to fight with him for fun. Yechin knew he would win, but there were many cameras around. According to the rules, the use of abilities outside the abyss was prohibited to everyone except law enforcement and special personnel. Yechin was looking for the blind spot of the cameras to use his skills, but a man suddenly appeared, startling the collectors. It was Caesar, the leader of the S-Class hunting party Blood Oath, who approached his boys and began to interrogate them if they had gathered enough people. They were only one person short, so Caesar decided to hire Yechin, which shocked the boy. He explained to the guy that at this time in the abyss, all the monsters would be in a state of rage. The monsters will be fought by a prepared combat group, so the level of the newbie is not important, as he is used as bait. Caesar added that rare monsters will also appear in the abyss, and the rewards for killing them will be doubled, including magic crystals. Yechin had no reason to refuse and voluntarily agreed to go with them. At this moment, Lao Chen suddenly appeared, and Yechin rushed to him to explain. Lao Chen realized that Yechin's existence was not a fiction after all, but Yechin reminded him that he was alive only because of him, and asked him not to blab too much. Caesar walked over, surprised by Yechin's acquaintance with Lao Chen, and the tension from the whole situation increased significantly. Yechin lied, calling Lao Chen a random passerby, and Caesar believed him, because obviously no one wants to be friends with the killer of their own team. Lao Chen, barely containing his anger, told about his release, and the $1.5 million fine he had paid, which had completely emptied his pockets. Having lost everything because of Yechin, Lao Chen threatened to report to the committee, but he did not realize how stupid this idea was. Yechin calmly ordered him to shut up, and warned that for such threats he would process Lao Chen like rotting trash. The three reached the metro, where a team of low-level hunters was already waiting for them. The guy, clearly the leader of the group, explained that they were also planned to be used as bait. He explained that their fate as newcomers was unenviable. They were expected to be injured or die, but they had to stick together in this situation. In addition, the young guy introduced himself as a third-level bard and decided to introduce the rest of the team. They were two men. One belonged to the warrior class, and the other was a doctor. Caesar stood in front of the group and explained that in addition to the 6 main fighters, they had temporary decoys to carry out dangerous tasks. The abyss was a labyrinth with many traps, and the task of the decoys was to quickly find a passage to the boss and inform the main team. Caesar did not have high hopes for the decoys' fighting skills and ordered them to simply run when encountering monsters in order to survive. In addition, he reminded that in order to receive money, at least one had to survive, and if this happens, he will receive a reward for all the others. Fear gripped the hearts of the newcomers, but they could not retreat, because everyone had their own reasons for risking their lives for money. Although when they saw the hero, their fear turned to bewilderment. Among the nervous recruits, only Yechin looked relaxed. His calmness seemed strange against the backdrop of general tension. Upon entering the abyss, the group found no monsters, but a sudden chill pierced everyone to the bone due to the sharp drop in temperature. Yechin and Zhou Gong walked ahead of the others and narrowly escaped the first trap. The trap was accidentally activated by Zhou Gong, who almost lost his head from the huge blade. But the guy frivolously asked the others not to worry, as he considered himself a lucky man. Suddenly, due to the fault of the same bard, another trap was activated, and huge cocoons began to rain down from above. Enemies, huge 5th-level spider demons, began to emerge from their cocoons. The hunters fought desperately, but their strength was clearly not enough to cope with the horde of monsters, and the situation was becoming critical. The only one who remained calm was Yechin, who even after being bitten by the demon spider, did not receive any damage. But when the monster started to really irritate him, he killed it with a simple kick. After defeating the spider, Yechin received raw materials for processing and a new ability, Arcanum of the Sealed Poison. The Arcana allowed one to enhance items and equipment, and Yechin immediately realized how useful this ability could be in battle. Noticing the plight of his allies, Yechin decided to intervene. First, he used a poison lasso on his blade and rushed into the thick of the battle. Zhou Gong was in the worst situation at this moment, as his profession as a bard did not involve direct participation in battle. In an attempt to help his allies, Zhou Gong sang to give the others a buff. But instead of strengthening his allies, his song made the spider demons even stronger, and he was forced to flee. When it seemed that Zhou Gong would be struck by the monster, Yechin arrived in time and killed the spider demon with one swing of his poisoned blade. In addition, he also quickly went to the rest of the group, whom he quickly rescued. Yechin's lightning-fast movements prevented the others from noticing that he was the one who slayed the monsters, and everyone decided that they should thank the bard for their victory. But only one guy knew that he was not capable of fighting and could only strengthen the others. Yechin didn't explain anything and headed towards the remaining monsters who froze, not daring to attack him. He knew that these monsters had a fairly high intelligence, so having probably smelled the spider venom from him, they would decide to leave, considering that there were no survivors left. And he turned out to be right, and the entire army of spider monsters decided to return to their lair. While the others were planning their next route, Yechin decided to recycle 27 extra copies of the Arcana, leaving only one in case the weapon was improved. The team moved on at this time, and the bard promised to be careful in the future. But Yechin noticed something more interesting, a secret berserker zone that appeared from behind the red moon. Yechin decided to explore the area on his own, but his absence must not be noticed. In his place, he sent the Bloody Nightmare, which took his form. Even despite the stupid expression on the Bloody Nightmare's face, no one noticed the substitution. As soon as Yechin entered this peculiar portal, he was immediately attacked by demon spiders. But this spider demon was really smart, so it wasn't that easy to deal with. Yechin tried to attack with physical strikes, but the monster didn't have a scratch due to its high defense level. After another useless attack, he decided to use the all-seeing eye to find at least some weak spot. But he only saw that the monster was an elite level. Yechin realized that by refining this monster, he would definitely be able to gain new, incredibly powerful abilities. Moving into the spider's blind spot, the hero attacked it with fire magic, but the monster turned out to be fireproof, which made the attack useless and forced the warrior to look for another way to defeat the enemy. Taking his lasso blade, Yechin deftly moved closer to the spider, intending to try a new method of fighting. Finally, after a series of lightning strikes, he managed to wound all of the monster's eyes, dealing a critical blow to the monster's most vulnerable spot and significantly weakening its defense. While the bites of level 5 demon spiders were known to be poisonous, this level 20 tarantula had a surprising resistance to poison, which unexpectedly became its main weakness in battle. The giant spider was immune to most known poisons, but the poison on Yechin's blade came as a surprise to the monster. But despite the poisoning effect, the spider still managed to trap the hero in a net of strong web. The monster slowly moved closer for a decisive attack, but with the help of his berserker abilities, the guy was able to easily escape from this sticky trap. Having freed himself, Yechin did not hesitate, and taking advantage of his opponent's confusion, delivered a crushing physical blow. After defeating the monster, Yechin was given the option to level up the berserker card, choosing between two options: Blood Splash, which gave the berserker more power, or increasing its duration. The first option allowed to partially neutralize the enemy's resistance, but in return, the hero's health was slowly depleted, while the second option increased the duration of the berserker state and accelerated its recovery. Although most would have chosen the second, more reliable option, the battle with the tarantula monster proved to Yechin the opposite. The enemy's unusualness required an unconventional approach. By choosing the first option, Yechin could strengthen his berserker state and counteract the decrease in health with his regenerative ability. This would allow him to deal damage even to opponents with strong resistance to physical damage. In addition to upgrading the berserker card, Yechin received a few more cards and selected equipment that he could officially take from the abyss. Having looked at the rest of the cards, the hero realized that he would not be able to use them due to his low level. Therefore, he decided to rework the rest on the spot, so as not to raise unnecessary questions. Among the rewards received was a rare tarantula card, which allows you to summon up to 4 tarantulas, who will fight side by side with the hero and develop at their own pace, gaining combat experience. Yechin was shocked by the potential of this ability, realizing that if the level of the summoned tarantulas could increase, they would become indispensable assistants in future battles. At this time, the rest of the group, moving deeper into the abyss, came across a mine rich in magical crystals. It is likely that there were so many crystals due to the influence of the mysterious red moon. The group's healer installed a magical eye that marked an area with a radius of 60 meters and allowed others to see the location on a map. This made Lao Chen furious, because they could have taken the crystals and lived comfortably for the rest of their lives. The group's sorcerer, however, knew that if Caesar found this location without their direction, he would immediately kill them all, so he tried to explain to Lao Chen that their purpose was simply to pave the way for the main force. Lao Chen, remembering his past, when he himself got rid of people he considered trash. Now he found himself in the position of the very trash he never thought he would become before meeting Yechin. Despite his low level, Lao Chen hoped that if he could steal a few magic crystals, he would be able to get some good equipment. This equipment will compensate for his weak skills and will help him get into the main forces of the group. But as soon as Lao Chen tried to steal the crystal, the trap was activated. The first victim of the trap was the group's healer, who received a fatal wound to the head and burned alive in front of the others. At this time, Yeqing summoned his first tarantula. The spider looked cute and helpless for now, but in the future it could grow into a formidable 5th-level demon spider. Therefore, the hero decided to give the tarantula some of his universal points, thereby increasing his level. After the death of the healer, a real quarrel and fight began in the group. The warrior grabbed Lao Chen, threatening him with reprisals for killing a comrade who had come to the abyss for the sake of his family and children. A frightened Lao Chen made excuses, saying that he also needed money. He was sure that in a world where everything was decided by money, anyone in his place would have done the same. Caesar appeared, having assessed Lao Chen's statement, and invited him to join the Blood Oath group. Moreover, he was not surprised by the sight of the corpse, since death was a frequent occurrence in this dangerous place. Caesar pulled the traitor towards him and explained that the crystals, which only appeared during the red moon, were so valuable that one piece would be enough to keep him from working for the rest of his life. But the price for extracting each such stone was high, namely someone's life. So Caesar's comrade threw the bucket on the floor and ordered the others to collect the crystals. The man understood, knowing that any of them, if they even touched the crystal, would die immediately, and in this way Caesar wanted to get rid of unnecessary people. It was true, but Caesar considered it a rather noble act, since they came here for money for their families. Moreover, according to the warrior, he wanted to earn money for his terminally ill wife. Caesar thought that his life was worth paying for the treatment of his beloved and giving her a comfortable future. But the man, approaching the crystals, began to cry and confessed that in fact he did not have a wife, and he came here to pay off his debts, begging for mercy. Lao Chen, looking at Caesar, understood that he was truly a powerful and dangerous opponent. Gathering his courage, he reminded him of the offer to join the Blood Oath, promising to be useful. By this point, Caesar barely remembered his promise, and even had to ask his comrades for help to remind him of his words. Instead of accepting Lao Chen, Caesar mocked him cruelly, saying that they had no intention of accepting such a pathetic traitor into their group. At this time, the Bloody Nightmare noticed the approach of his master, and the hero, unnoticed by the others, hid him back in the inventory and took his place. Approaching the leader of their group of decoys, the hero asked the guy not to do stupid things with the crystals and not to touch them. Yeqing asked honestly about the dangers of collecting crystals, but instead of answering, the other hunters began to complain about his inattention. Not receiving an answer, the guy calmly walked up and pulled out the crystal himself, while everyone else ran away under fear of death. When nothing happened, everyone assumed that the trap was broken or had only worked once. Yeqing at this time realized that the trap was most likely fatal, and his high luck stat helped him avoid death. Caesar, noticing Yeqing's unusual luck, guessed that his luck score was over 60. But his comrade considered this stupid, because no one would decide to increase such a useless characteristic. But he was wrong and paid for it with his own life, because the trap worked on him. Caesar was convinced that he was right, and realized that the hero was really strange, since he spent so much time improving his luck. And only the hero knew that he distributed all the characteristics evenly, without focusing on one thing. Caesar then decided to use the hero to collect the crystals, planning to turn everyone else into living corpses, and then get rid of them. Caesar ordered his comrades to completely block all exits to prevent the enemy from escaping. He immediately realized that they would definitely die, and would not be able to escape, since they were dealing with a blood oath. Lao Chen, looking at the whole picture with fear, decided to run away, taking the stolen crystal with her. Yeqing clearly didn't understand why he did this, because at the very least they could have equalized in numbers to defeat the enemy. Now they were missing one fighter, but Yeqing didn't know that he had a secret technique, and there would definitely be enough fighters. On command, spider demons rained down from the sky and pounced on their enemies. Zhou Gong thought that these were more enemies that they would also have to fight off, but Yeqing explained that these spider demons were their allies. After which the hero scanned all the enemies and realized that there would be no problems if his spiders dealt with Cerberus's assistance. He himself had to deal with Cerberus, whose level he could not determine because they were close in strength. Cerberus was amazed that the guy, digging through the trash, was able to get himself some pretty good abilities. Yeqing clearly didn't pay attention to the provocations, thinking about what he should do if he had to confront this guy directly. Cerberus, believing himself to be the winner, gave the order to kill everyone so that he could collect all the crystals. At this moment, Yeqing realized that their plans had changed abruptly, so he asked the others to escape. The warrior was clearly nervous and didn't want to leave Yeqing alone, but he knew that staying here wouldn't be of much use, so he ran away. Afterwards, Yeqing also approached the bard, offering him to escape if he wanted to survive, and he also agreed. But as soon as they took a few steps, the passage was immediately covered with stones. Most likely, an activated trap was triggered. At this time, the spiders miraculously dealt with the melee fighters, splashing them with webs. Ye Qin was already rushing to help them in order to finish off the enemy. He realized that his level 10 spiderlings would be enough to even the odds, but they certainly wouldn't be enough to win, since he was dealing with a blood oath. So he decided to help his spiders by attacking the opponents directly himself. At this moment, the archers also began to act in an attempt to stop him, but Ye Qin managed to dodge their arrows. They couldn't believe it and shot again. Then he cut the arrow in half. Afterwards, the hero summoned his big explosion, and the archers standing in the distance flew into the air. Then it became obvious to everyone that this enemy was not as simple as it initially seemed. At the other end of the mine, one of the warriors began to catch up with the fugitives and killed the spider that was guarding them, after which he attacked the rest of the guys. The warrior managed to protect her leader Zhou Gong in time, covering him with her shield. And although his shield withstood one attack, after the second attack, he hit the wall hard, which immediately made it obvious that he would not be able to fight any longer. So he demanded that his opponent kill him quickly and without regret, closing his eyes, preparing to attack. But at that moment, Zhou Gong began to sing his song, thereby freezing the enemy and asking his comrade to attack him while there was such an opportunity. But it turned out that Zhou Gong had poor control over her abilities, which is why she froze not only the fighter, but also her friend. Looking at the scene in the distance, Ye Qin had absolutely no idea what they were doing and why they hadn't escaped yet. At this moment, another enemy appeared in front of him, who was clearly quite strong, and explained to Ye Qin that sooner or later he would run out of mana. It was true, since summoning magic did consume a lot of energy, and he had summoned clones earlier, causing his mana to be almost completely depleted. The spiders continued to waste mana, but he had a remedy, so he took out his magic potion from his inventory. With this potion, he began to raise his mana level, and the magician did not understand what he was doing now, because he was not used to such an appearance of potions, so he began to summon corpses, since he was a C-class necromancer, and his corpses could fight endlessly until his mana ran out. This clearly interested the guy, but even this was not a problem for him, given the ability to absorb. So he ordered his abilities to recycle these dead bodies. After the necromancer was left without a weapon, Ye Qin was able to directly attack him and disable him. By this time, Caesar had dealt with one of the spiders that had attacked him, and had come to appreciate Ye Qin's abilities, and realized that it was not in vain that he had paid attention to him near that stall. Ye Qin would be happy if it didn't come to a battle now, and they could calmly receive their payment and go home. But he understood that this would not work with Caesar, because they were paying for other people's human lives, and they were also using people as cannon fodder, which was morally unacceptable, and he could not forgive it. Caesar believed that, despite the fact that the guy had potential, he did not stop being cannon fodder, because in this world, whoever was strong had power. But he was distracted by the plaintive cry of someone who could not kill the frozen enemy and asked for help. This was because Zhou Gong could strengthen his allies, but he himself was unable to kill even a weak monster, let alone a human. At this time, Caesar explained to Ye Qin that they would not be able to get out of here alive in any case, because either Caesar's team would be destroyed or Ye Qin would die with the others. Ye Qin only laughed at these words because he knew that everyone had the right to enter the abyss and come out alive, and he was ready to prove it. Caesar thought he was naive, so without thinking twice, he began to attack, and the guy managed to block this attack. Even so, he acknowledged how powerful the blow had been. He had never met a man stronger than Caesar before. Before Ye Qin could even rest, the hunter pounced on him to finish the battle with a final blow, but the hero quickly managed to escape. Zhou Gong was in even more trouble at this time, as the enemy began to move again and attacked without sparing any effort. This time, he was also saved by a fighter. Exposing himself to attack and bleeding, he asked Zhou Gong to do at least something, because he was chosen as their leader, which meant he was strong enough. But Zhou Gong explained that he actually thought that if he became the leader, he wouldn't have to kill monsters. Falling to his knees, he began to beg for mercy and ask not to be killed. He began to remember his past in the previous team, from where he was kicked out because he could not fight the same monsters that the others could fight. And even when it came to empowering others, he couldn't pick the right target, and he ended up all alone, abandoned on the street. That's where Caesar found him and invited him to help him with a job. At this moment, the battle between Caesar and Ye Qin was clearly heating up, and the hunter was clearly winning using a secret martial arts technique that inflicts continuous physical damage to the point of impact. And if Ye Qin tried to use magic, this wound would only get worse, and he would quickly die. This skill could cripple even the most powerful mage, eating away at his body, so Caesar was amazed at how the hero was amazed at how confidently he still stood on his feet. Running away, the hero did not understand what was happening to Caesar, and why, despite using the skill, he did not lose blood at all. While thinking, the guy suddenly remembered the skills he had received related to blood. During one of Ye Qing's attacks, he was thrown straight towards Zhou Gong, and he explained that the boy was foolishly hoping that he would be shown mercy just because he was weak. The hero himself once dreamed of mercy like no one else, because he was disappointed by his weakness from the very beginning. He was also weak and not capable of much, but he did not give up because he was not afraid of his weakness. The only thing you really need to be afraid of is your own cowardice. You need to be afraid of losing heart. But Ye Qin was always confident that he would achieve more, and he did. And when he gathered all his will into a fist and took the first step, he knew that all his life he had been preparing to become king. Zhou Gong was inspired by these words because he understood that compared to enduring ridicule, it was better to simply disguise himself and run away. But he knew for sure that he didn't want to live his whole life so miserably. He wanted to become stronger. But even so, it was obvious that he, with his 3rd level, would not be able to defeat someone with a 17th level. But he didn't seem to be in the mood for a fight. So he threw his weapon away and began to compose poetry as he went. He finally found the best enhancement he had ever had, and with this enhancement, he strengthened Ye Qing himself, thereby increasing his defense, speed, and resistance by 15%. At this time, Ye Qin himself threw a bloody nightmare at the enemy, and the nightmare immediately managed to bind the enemy in its cocoon and began to strangle him. At this time, Ye Qin also activated the berserk state of blood splash, thus making him equal in physical strength to the enemy. And finally, he really became able to attack Cerberus even with an ordinary dagger. Cerberus was clearly at a loss, as he didn't know that Ye Qing could pass through any armor with the blood splash ability. But using the skills still required a lot of energy, so Ye Qing knew that he had to end this fight as soon as possible. Cerberus was also interested in how this fight would end, because someone who spent 20 years practicing clearly couldn't lose to some pathetic garbage man. But even with his best abilities, Ye Qing found it difficult to resist this man, and so he was thrown back to the edge of the mine once again. Caesar explained that Ye Qin was indeed acting recklessly, rushing at him as if he wanted to die from his blow, since he was definitely not someone who would lose to him in terms of strength. But Ye Qin was not going to lose, as he had another trump card up his sleeve, and he asked to add all the unallocated points to the strength. At this moment, 176 points were added. Even Cerberus began to look at him with excitement, not knowing what awaited him next. Ye Qin was satisfied with the fact that his strength had increased instantly, and even his muscle mass had increased. Sure, he was still behind in martial arts technique, but at least now he had enough strength to hit properly. After the collision, Caesar found himself with completely broken fingers, and did not understand where Ye Qing got such strength from. But Ye Qin had no intention of letting him go, so he followed after him, and pinning the man to the ground, promised that he would not leave even a living spot of Caesar. Looking into the eyes of his death, the man began to remember his past. He remembered how he first joined the company 8 years ago and became their cannon fodder. Then he was taught the basic rules. Whoever is stronger is right, and he has followed these rules to this very day. Everyone around him thought that Caesar would forever remain cannon fodder because he could not fight the same monsters that everyone else could fight. But one day he decided to prove to everyone, including himself, the opposite. He wanted to get promoted in the hierarchy, but he was too frivolous, which is why he suffered greatly and could even die. This is exactly how the scientist found him, with his lower body torn apart, 8 ribs broken, and his heart pierced through. All other internal organs were damaged, and it would take a lot of crystals to replace it all. But by that time, new technologies had already appeared that made it possible to extract valuable cells from the monsters of the abyss and transplant them into the human body. It just so happened that Caesar's DNA had many similar fragments to the monster's DNA, and the good news was that he would live. But the bad news was that he was now a hybrid of monster and man. But it was after this that he proved his worth by becoming a full-fledged member of the team, and then he was given his brooch for the first time. All other participants were killed because they became completely useless. Then Caesar realized that if he couldn't prove his worth, he would become nothing more than trash. After all these memories, he received the status of indestructible. His defense has increased significantly, and the damage he deals has become much greater. It was obvious that Caesar had awakened the inhuman part of himself with which he was connected. In addition, he began to absorb the power of magic crystals. He explained that they were rich in energy and literally seething with magical power. And during the new moon, the crystals were especially strong. And thanks to the transplanted organs of the monster, he could feed on the power of the magical crystals, like the other monsters. Moreover, for a short time, he could become even stronger than the Abyss boss, and even the system detected him as a boss. and how inopportunely Ye Qin's berserker state faded, and now he clearly didn't understand what to do. Caesar suggested that the hero let go of his human body and become a monster like him, but Ye Qin was clearly not happy with this prospect. Therefore, he refused, and several stones thrown by Caesar flew after him, after which the hunter himself began to approach, and finally buried the hero under stones. Zhou Gong, who was watching from the side, realized that it would definitely be difficult for him to fight against such a high-level player. Even Ye Qin, who hid his strength and was stronger than all the companions, was unable to fight him. And although Caesar clearly lost his strength in battle, he still had an indestructible, monstrous essence. Caesar explained that there was always a price to pay for the power he had, so he decided to show them this ugly part of himself. At this point, Caesar noticed Zhou Gong watching him and realized that he was the last surviving guy he hadn't had time to deal with yet, so he decided to deal with him and leave quietly. Suddenly, Ye Qin stopped him and asked him to speak one last time. Caesar decided to fulfill his last wish, and then the guy explained that he wanted to leave the abyss alive. He asked Caesar to turn around, explaining that he was clearly not the last one standing, at which point Caesar realized that the blow he dealt to Ye Qin was clearly not the final one. Somehow he managed to survive, and Ye Qin himself thanked Zhou Gong for buying him some time, and he was able to fully recover. Ye Qin explained that he couldn't see the enemy's weaknesses with the naked eye, so he relied on Bloody Nightmare and obtained secret information through direct contact with Caesar's body. Caesar was shocked that he didn't even notice that he wasn't fighting Ye Qin himself. The hero explained that after using the berserker power, he was completely powerless for another 30 seconds, so he had to hide. It was during this time that he replaced himself with a Bloody Nightmare, but during the observation, he noticed another interesting thing. Caesar, who possessed a body that erased the boundaries between man and monster, decided to stretch out his greedy hands to the very abyss, so that the abyss would respond to him naturally and make him pay. Considering this to be some kind of stupid metaphor, Caesar did not understand why Ye Qin was telling him all this. But at that moment his body began to change, and he roared in pain, because his hands literally began to turn into something inhuman. He himself began to change more and more, looking like a monster. In anger, he decided to attack Ye Qin himself, but Ye Qin dodged and realized that this change in Caesar's body had further increased his speed. But he could still dodge these attacks. The only downside was that he didn't have a weapon. As if he understood this, Zhou Gong found the boy's blade and threw it straight towards Ye Qin, who caught his weapon at the last moment. Ye Qin mounted the raging Caesar and then dealt him several blows to the back of the head. Looking at his bleeding neck, he immediately realized that all these blows were critical. Ye Qin suggested that the enemy not relax, since he clearly underestimated him. Then Caesar lost his temper and decided to kill Ye Qin. He considered himself a superior being, with whom no one could compete. But at the last moment, Ye Qin used fire magic on him, and explained that Caesar was now nothing more than a monster to him. After this, Caesar completely mutated and lost his human appearance. This was exactly what Ye Qin had been waiting for, so he suggested that Caesar listen to the call of the abyss. A few minutes before this, the hero received a call from the system. He could receive a rare reward if he defeated Caesar without killing him. Ye Qin knew that this madman would not leave here alive anyway, so he decided to accept the challenge in order to obtain a rare reward. Hiding in the Bloody Nightmare, Ye Qin asked Zhou Gong to try his best to distract Caesar's attention for at least 5 seconds. But now the monster belonged entirely to the abyss and would not be able to leave it. For the abyss welcomes with open arms those who have renounced their humanity. Such were the rules of the abyss. Monsters often went berserk during the blood moon, but this blood moon brought madness with it. At this time, Lao Chen happily looked at the rewards he had received and realized that he had become truly rich and would be able to upgrade his skills and start a new life. He thought he had changed his destiny, but the fate of a traitor was always predetermined. After this task, Zhou Gong and Ye Qin went to a bar, where the bard tearfully begged Ye Qin to become his boss, in exchange for which he would always be loyal to the hero. Ye Qin tried to explain that he couldn't be a cool leader, but Zhou Gong remembered his words about Ye Qin always preparing to become a king, after which the boy realized that he was ready to follow this man anywhere. Ye Qin awkwardly admitted that at that moment, for some reason, he decided to pretend to be cool. But now he realizes how awkwardly he said something nonsense. But Zhou Gong had a different opinion, because only after hearing these words did he have a purpose in life. And now he wants to become the best support for the king. Ye Qin understood that this guy was currently a guy with 2 agility and 1 luck who miraculously survived on the battlefield, so it wouldn't hurt for him to have a huge amount of training. Zhou Gong further imagined how good a team they would be, but Ye Qin explained that it was better for Zhou Gong not to go into the abyss. He understood that if a guy could empower others, but he himself constantly needed protection, then he was a bad support, and the hero did not want the guy to constantly risk his life. Instead of explaining, Ye Qin gave Zhou Gong 1,000 magic crystals, which would be all his savings, enough to last for a long time, so he asked the guy not to go into the abyss anymore. Zhou Gong clearly appreciated his concern, but he didn't want to continue living like trash, because even after death, he wanted to be remembered and thought of as a hero. Looking at him, Ye Qin saw the determination in his eyes. He wondered how this guy was going to help others when he couldn't even protect himself. The hero reminded that the microphone can be held in one hand and took out the sword of one of the dead fighters. He explained that a bard is a profession in itself, which represents a balance of physical and magical strength. Zhou Gong can deal magical damage by using weakening and strengthening spells, and he can also deal physical damage by improving his fighting skills. If he was bad with a sword before, now is the time to learn how to do so in order to become stronger. Then Zhou Gong realized that he didn't need these crystals, because he knew what he would do next, and Ye Qin suggested giving these crystals to the families of the deceased, and in the future they will be able to earn even more during their travels. Somewhere else, a meeting of the Blood Oath members was taking place. The girl who came reported that after the incident with the blood-red moon, a small C-rank detachment was sent out and cleared the abyss of all demons. It contained the corpses of members of the Blood Oath and their leader Caesar, who was heavily infected, completely demonized, and now they want to neutralize him. In addition, the bodies of several strangers were found, including one of their acquaintances. This acquaintance was Lao Chen, who was recently hailed as the team killer in another abyss invasion incident. He was wearing top-notch equipment, so they assumed that he had a battle with Caesar's monster. The Blood Oath leader and the others realized that Caesar was nothing more than a useless dog who had failed to prove his worth, and decided to end the conversation. At the same time, somewhere in a state hospital, there was a man who was sobbing hysterically in a ward, apologizing to his daughter, after which he took out the key and, looking at it, realized that he had no other choice. At that moment, the key was activated, and suddenly the sky was filled with purple light. Then this purple light rushed further and demons appeared from it, who began to destroy the surrounding areas of the cities. A portal to the abyss itself opened in this hospital, so people urgently started calling the police and hunters. At the same time, the hero had a dream where monsters burst out of the abyss and he, Little, with his sister, tried to escape. But no matter how hard they ran, the monster's attack eventually caught up with them, and the boy was unable to hold on to his sister. The girl, crying, fell into the monster's open mouth. At this moment, Ye Qin woke up from his own heart-rending scream. He was angry that he was dreaming the same dream again. Looking at the calendar, he realized that it was time for him to get ready, and he went into a flower shop, where he asked them to pick him a bouquet of flowers. A familiar florist immediately understood that the guy was going to visit his sister, and the girl was sincerely glad that the girl had such a reliable and caring older brother. While the bouquet was being assembled, the hero decided to help the girl sort out the heavy bouquets of flowers, after which Ye Qin took the flowers and was about to go to his sister, but at that moment he heard some strange sound. He soon realized that these were all patrol cars and ambulances rushing towards the hospital where his sister was lying, so he rushed in the right direction. At this moment, the opened abyss was completely cordoned off by the police. But Ye Qin didn't care at all that he was forbidden to go inside, and he silently walked past the police and was swallowed up by the abyss. As he entered, Ye Qin promised his sister Xiaoju that he would not be late this time and would definitely help her. The gate created another space inside the hospital, much larger than the entire building, just like last time. The job change squad team should have been here before Ye Qin arrived. As evidence of this, he noticed some kind of potion at his feet. It was clearly inaccessible to ordinary shift workers, which meant that the people who came were not so simple. Deciding to play it safe, he filled the potion bottle with his own regeneration potion, which instantly restored 85% of magical energy and eliminated the feeling of fatigue. Since he was going here alone to look for his sister, the expenditure of magical energy would be huge, and he needed to prepare for everything. After wandering around the area, he realized that there was a fork in the road, and once he chose his path, he would no longer be able to go back. He understood that in this case, he needed to choose one reliable route. Based on the remaining fresh tracks, he assumed that there were most likely routes that had already been laid out by previous rescue teams. Ye Qin decided to take a different route to increase his chances of survival, as this abyss was obviously vast, so there was no telling how long it would take to reach the end, so the worst thing to do was to try to go through all the branches. But there was no time to think, because the abyss was slowly eating away at his strength, and he decided to act faster and more decisively. When the guy chose the path, he realized that there was a clear red carpet, meaning that he was here first. The way back was already swallowed by darkness, so there was no way he could return. Besides, he found a fairly familiar object, whose power he had already seen, and he would surely be able to use it to mark places he had already been to. Taking the Eye of Argos, he asked it to show him a map, but it turned out that it was not capable of displaying a map of such a vast area. It then became clear why the people who first set out here marked their path with a sword, since this device did not work properly. Suddenly he noticed something strange reaching towards him, which looked like some kind of activated trap. As Yechin prepared for battle, he noticed something strange. He didn't hear any sound from the mechanism. Most likely it wasn't a mechanism, but some kind of monster. Just at the last moment he felt something approaching him from behind, so he managed to dodge in time and was even able to attack. Even though the monster's body was cut in half, the attack was ineffective, meaning it had physical immunity. This creature screamed, which caused the hero to be deafened. He could not hear anything at all, and his perception was significantly reduced. He realized that he had clearly underestimated the danger of this place and had encountered a monster of rules, but he remembered that he had been in a similar place 3 years ago. When he still had no abilities, he came to a place where there were destroyed statues of things. Looking at their smiling faces, the hero realized that the statues did not pose a threat. Yechin began to collect the fallen crystals until he realized that the statues had been slowly approaching him the entire time. At first he thought he was having some kind of hallucination or illusion, because he was sure that the statues in front of him were just a pile of stones. The garbage man who approached him explained that he should not turn away from the statue and should look at them without blinking, because they were demonic crying statues. Demonic crying statues are C-class creatures that usually do not attack, but act differently. As soon as a person makes eye contact with them, they freeze. Turning into statues, they focus on a person, but if you look away, they will pounce with super speed and kill him. So now they had to back away slowly and not blink until they were out of the room. But to his horror, at the most crucial moment, Yechin stumbled, causing him to lose visual contact with the statues, and they began to approach at lightning speed. He was lucky that another garbage man noticed this in time and managed to lower the stone doors at the last moment, thereby locking them inside. Yechin was clearly very lucky this time, but his comrade advised him to be more careful next time, as normal attacks were completely useless against such monsters. And although they, like scavengers, were inexperienced in battles, it was important for them to know the characteristics of demons in order to be able to escape from them. Yechin remembered that if he had been able to deal with the monsters of the rules back then, he had a better chance now, so he decided to use the Big Bang attack. But instead of striking, he realized that he had instead begun to burn his own hand. Apparently in this place even fire could not be controlled. While he was busy with his hand, the monster had already prepared for an attack that Yechin hadn't noticed. But at the last moment he was saved by a dash from the spiritual wolf. This dash helped him avoid the blow, but Yechin understood that he didn't have much time left for this fight, since he had been in the abyss for a long time, and he still didn't know where to go. He had been in this room for too long, and had already realized that his opponent was physically invulnerable. His attacks were mainly aimed at one type of damage. After a few more blows, Yechin remembered that this opponent could be dodged and at least avoided. He finally noticed a pattern. The monster only materialized after its attacks. Before swinging the sickle, it lost its defense against physical attacks. Moreover, this was its weakness, so he was able to defeat the monster by waiting for the right moment. But instead of dissolving, the monster only took on another, more powerful form. However, if before Yechin only had hearing problems, now he also had very poor vision due to the scattered veil. He didn't know what to do and even wanted to call a clone in order to save himself. But if he uses a clone now, it will take 30 seconds to recharge, and the remaining magic power will not be enough for the monster. During the time of his thoughts, the monster even managed to attack, but Yechin dodged it in time, although he received a slight injury. After thinking for a bit, he decided to try activating another skill, super regeneration of a carnivorous plant. In this way he healed his wounds and also restored his hearing. Yechin realized that this monster was clearly afraid of light. Therefore, even the weakest light would not allow it to get close, so Yechin summoned his fire, which clearly made the monster laugh. The monster was not affected by such attacks, but instead of attacking the enemy, Yechin lit a fire around himself, and thanks to the light that illuminated everything around him, he was now able to see what was around him, after which he rushed at full speed towards the monster, and the monster was afraid of the flame, because his true power is darkness, which could frighten many. But the monster didn't know that Yechin Yu didn't need to cast a spell to do this. He himself became fire, after which he rushed at the monster and used a large explosion. Even though he himself suffered from his attack, The monster was completely defeated. At the end of the battle, his hand was so badly burned that he could no longer hold a weapon or cast spells. His health dropped below 10%, so he decided to wait and regenerate his health. At this time, the converter, even without the master's command, began to devour the body of this monster. But when Ye Qing noticed it, it was already too late. He was given the artifact Soul Reaper, which summons a demonic spirit with a scythe, dealing 5 times more base damage. If any target dies from this skill, the owner immediately activates the effect Reap of Despair, restoring 5% of health and mana. This card was quite useful, and it was the first time Ye Qing had seen an artifact card that was soul-bound. Soul Scythe seems to be able to convert kills into health and mana points. If used in a battle with a large number of enemies, they will not have a chance. However, if the enemy is not immediately defeated, he will receive the same amount of damage in return or even die, so this card must be used wisely. Just at this point, when he had studied everything, the passage was unblocked, so the hero went on to the next test. At that moment, Xiaoju woke up in a room where the monster was gutting the rest of the people. She knew it was her turn next, so she took the bottle and threw it into the far corner to distract the monster, and he went towards the noise. Everything worked as she planned, but at the moment when she was supposed to get out and quietly leave, she fell loudly and hit her head hard. The monster didn't seem to notice this, so she wanted to grab her stuffed animal to leave, but it was too late. The monster approached her and opened its mouth as a threat. At the moment when it seemed that the girl could no longer be saved, an unknown hunter crept up from behind and cut off the monster's hand. It was a warrior with a 2-handed sword named Wu Ming, and after saving the girl, the man was about to leave indifferently. But the girl grabbed his leg and asked him to help her get out of there. The man was not against taking the girl with him, and he promised that he would accompany her if she was near him, but he would not protect her. But he did not even know that she could not walk. 7 years ago, after the Abyss incident, the doctor told Ye Qing Yu that his sister's spinal nerves were severely damaged. Because of this, Xiaoju would never be able to walk like before again, and it would be a miracle if she regained the feeling in even her upper body. Ye Qing couldn't accept the fact that his sister would never be able to walk, but the doctor knew that, theoretically, even with such an injury, she might have a chance. The doctor explained that he could not say anything for sure, since science was no longer useful here, but he knew of a case where blind people regained their sight in the Abyss. After all, the Abyss can cure diseases that are incurable in reality. This mysterious power does not correspond to known scientific theories, but if Xiaoju's disability was caused by the monster from the Abyss, then the cure can happen there. Little Ye Qin realized that if there is a cure for this disease in the Abyss, then he can cure his sister by going there. But the doctor warned that only those who change professions can enter the Abyss, and if he doesn't go there now, he will definitely die, so the doctor suggested that the boy think about something more real. Now she had to stay in the hospital, but she would need at least 8,000 yuan a day for that. Ye Qin thanked the doctor and promised that he would definitely find the money. The nurse who came up understood who the doctor was talking about earlier. On the day the Abyss opened, it was Ye Qin's parents who died on the same day, and his sister became disabled. Everyone sympathized with this boy. He tried his best to smile. And every time he came to visit his sister, the boy happily told his sister that he had spoken with her doctor, and that the prognosis was not so bad. Besides, he was going to go to a place called the Abyss. He explained that the Abyss was a safe enough place for him to heal her. He also brought a gift for her, and gave her a small teddy bear. He explained that very soon he would not be able to visit her so often, so this bear would protect her instead of him. Xiaoju explained that she had no one left except Ye Qing, so she asked him not to put himself in danger, and she didn't want him to go where there were monsters. Ye Qin explained that he had found a job and would soon earn enough money to cure her legs so that she could walk again. But Xiaoju would rather sit in a wheelchair for the rest of her life than have her brother sacrifice himself for money, so she made him promise that he would never go to dangerous places. Now the girl explained to the hunter that she couldn't walk, but she also couldn't stay here, because her brother would be very upset if she died here. Looking at these tears in her eyes, the man agreed to help her. So, lifting the girl, he sat her down in a chair, but explained that he should be as careful as possible, since she was not his client. He doesn't really care whether she's alive or dead, but she promised that she wouldn't bother him and would behave quietly. Ye Qin continued to wander in the Abyss at this time, and recalled that when he was working as a garbage collector, he learned one important thing about the Abyss. Only those parts of the body that were damaged in the Abyss itself can be healed. The main rule of the Abyss is that upon entering it, is impossible to go beyond the limits of the physical state. That is to say, if the burn was inflicted before entering the Abyss, it could not be cured. Otherwise, Ye Qin would have long ago found a way to cure his sister. But suddenly he saw many dead bodies, and realized that there had been a brutal battle here, because the level of monsters that lived in this abyss was much higher than that of these warriors. Most likely a group of monsters attacked them and managed to kill them all at once. But looking around, he realized that there were no living demons here, and most likely there were also survivors who went further. But suddenly his eyes widened when he saw a huge giant being cut down by a simple sword. His eye of insight didn't reveal anything useful, so he still didn't know who did it. Looking at the dead hunters again, he realized that they weren't very skilled in agility, so they most likely relied only on their brute strength. But Ye Qin was clearly much stronger than a bunch of people who were always changing jobs. He could even compare himself to a completely unkillable creature. Xiao Zhu was moving forward with Wu Ming at this moment, but suddenly some mechanism was triggered under his feet, after which, from an unknown direction, arrows began to fly straight towards the man's face. They hit his entire body, but his body did not bleed. Instead, it began to crack like stone. Looking at him, the girl asked in fear if he was in pain and if he was okay, but the man only looked at her in surprise, as if not understanding what they were talking about. 4 years ago, when Wu Ming's entire life changed, he was in the A-level abyss, Tomb of the Ancients. Then, right before his eyes, the monsters began to tear the skin off his comrades. Seeing the inaction of the mercenaries, their master ordered them not to be afraid and to fight, since he had paid a high price to hire them. Moreover, for mercenaries, the main thing was the payment they received to fight to the death, so they could not refuse this fight. Since Wu Ming is a criminal, he has no legal status and can only join the ranks of the privates as a mercenary. Among these desperate people, there are also those madmen who do not care about their lives. They committed suicide, asking for double the reward for their lives, and the owner was so desperate that he was willing to pay 200,000 to the person who would kill the Demon King and end this fight. Wu Ming knew that money could solve any problem, and people kept asking for more, so much so that the numbers were simply staggering, because their lives were just a bargaining chip. The people who agreed to pay 250,000 rushed into battle, and they died very quickly. There were only the mercenary and Wu Ming left, who was not yet eager to run into battle, and the aristocrat, who was clearly nervous, because he understood that he was left almost defenseless. He reminded that his protection is their main goal, otherwise there will be no monetary payments. In response to this, Wu Ming rushed to protect him, and at that moment he was finally able to defeat the Demon King, and naturally he was badly injured. But when he finally saw the chest with the reward for this battle, the male aristocrat pushed the mercenary away. Wu Ming fell to the side while the aristocrat himself ran to the chest, explaining that Wu Ming was already almost dead, so he had no need for money. But after opening the chest instead of the desired reward, the man found nothing, after which he began to be torn apart from the inside, and instead of blood and organs, sand began to pour out of his body. It was called the Sand Curse, and looking at his face, Wu Ming realized that this curse had also been passed on to him. He didn't really have a choice, so he decided to at least try to pick up the sphere that fell from the Demon King. It was an immortal artifact that turned its owners into undead. There is one downside, that is, holy and healing spells will cause fatal damage to it. But usually damage against the undead doesn't work. But the price of transformation was the loss of feelings and all emotions. He became a dead man who cannot die. Finally, after carefully examining the man, Xiao Zhu realized that his blood was turning into sand, and it was immediately obvious that he was undead. Wu Ming didn't answer and calmly walked on. At this time, Ye Qin was fighting new enemies. Since he was in a hurry and couldn't distribute the points properly, he could only continue to evenly pour in the points he had accumulated earlier. So now he had almost 200 points accumulated. But the downside was that he didn't know what to prepare for, since he didn't know what awaited him in the next room. Moreover, he must not forget about his health, because if he forgets about it even for a short time, then all this will end in death for him. The only advantage he noticed was that although the abyss monsters were strong, they were still unable to withstand the physical strain of constant fighting, so Ye Qin was able to defeat them as well. But after the death of these opponents, their number did not decrease, because more and more monsters came running to the sounds of the fight. After 4 battles with monsters, Ye Qin was completely exhausted. Now his mana was almost at 0. All the light magic potions in his backpack had already been used up. Only the large bottles found in the abyss remained, but he decided to save them for the critical moment, so he began to fight with purely physical attacks against these creatures. He found the moment to use the Soul Reaper sickle. Of course, it wasn't the best weapon due to its side effects, but it had the ability to trigger the effect of restoring his health and mana. In the end, he guessed right, because while the Little Reaper was destroying all the monsters, killing them left and right, he received a special effect from the artifact and began to restore his strength. This was quite a useful skill, as it allowed him to save potions and reduce the frequency of using super regeneration, and his health rose to over 100%. But by chance, he noticed a pair of glasses under his feet, which he accidentally stepped on. Although Yeching was surprised by their presence here, he was still about to leave, until a man fell out of the barrel and asked him to save him. When Yeching gave him his hand and the man climbed out of the barrel, he introduced himself as a doctor. The monsters that Yechin had just killed suddenly appeared in his room, and he was so scared of these monsters that he ran into a completely unfamiliar room to hide and stay alive. The doctor did not see any other survivors, because this abyss was huge, and few people could survive, not to mention the disabled and bedridden from the hospital. Yechin was clearly angry that the doctor was calling his patient so tactlessly when he was supposed to save people. The doctor explained that he was just a doctor, not a career changer, and he couldn't do anything about the monsters. So he decided to at least save his own life, because if he were strong in battle, he would hardly have hidden in a barrel. But he realized that this guy probably came to save him, and if that was the case, then he should stop acting so arrogantly, and just get him out of here, one way or another. Lionheart will surely promise him an amazing reward for his life. Upon hearing the name of this guild, Yechin immediately realized that it was clearly related to Caesar, because after he defeated the hunter, Zhou Gong noticed that the guy dropped some kind of token. This was the emblem of the Lionheart hunting party. It was a clan of the strongest, and the bar of these powerful hunters was also quite high. After realizing which group this doctor belonged to, Yechin decided to simply leave to continue searching for his sister. The doctor was clearly panicking, and didn't understand why Yechin was saving the local patients, since they were all poor people, and he clearly wouldn't get any rewards for it. Yechin calmly explained that he was here to find his sister. The man realized with fear that this guy was not a monster hunter at all. Yechin calmly explained that it was true. He was not a hunter. He was a scavenger who recycled trash instead of piling it up, after which he calmly walked to the next passage into the next room. The doctor tried to explain that this place was a labyrinth, and if the guy went further, he would definitely get lost. But the doctor was ready to show him the way so that they could go together and find his sister, and in exchange, Yechin would lead him out of here. But Yechin didn't answer, so the doctor just decided to go with him, believing that this guy was his only chance of salvation. After crossing to the other side, the doctor began to question the guy even more about what guild he was in. He was very surprised when he found out that the guy was not in any guild, because anyone with even a little bit of strength would be accepted into the hunting parties. He even offered to recommend Yeching to the best guild in exchange for his help. Yeching was clearly tired of this talk, so he said that his sister's name was Xiaoju. If this man knew her, then he just had to show her where she was. The doctor clearly became nervous when he heard his patient's name. Xiaoju was in the experimental group along with another girl. They were both minors, and in the opinion of others, their families did not care what happened to them. Especially regarding Xiaoju, who lives with her only brother, who went to work as a garbage collector to save money for her treatment. There were no parents, so the girl will not even know if her brother dies. The second girl was Lin Shuyan, whose family went bankrupt after her father was released from prison, and they had to borrow more money to survive. The doctors were clearly interested in these two candidates, but they did not know how to convince the families of these two girls or the girls themselves to agree to their adventure. It seemed to the man that this would be very easy to do, because they probably considered themselves burdens from which the family wanted to be freed. Especially considering Lin Shuyan's situation, whose father had no job, it was very difficult to support her. And although it was unpleasant to say, this girl's father had recently begun to visit her much less often, because the sick child had become a burden for him. And as for Xiaoju, it was all even simpler. During a personal meeting, the man explained to the girl that her brother risks his life every day to pay for her daily treatment, so he offered to lighten the load for her brother. He offered the two of them a new treatment that would help them stop being a burden to their families, and help them start changing things in their lives, and asked if they wanted to try it. In the end, they both agreed, and the men gave them a contract that they had to sign. Of course, it was easy to deceive two naive girls, because they both understood that without the possibility of being cured of them, there was no use in this life. The doctor knew that the results of their current research could help people gain strength and power, which would be of great benefit to society. Finally, they prepared to begin experimental treatment and testing their drugs, after which they began to inject it into the blood. But instead they saw a rather bad effect. A reaction began in the subject's body. The organism rejected the cells of the abyss, and no energy fluctuations were detected. In the end, the injection of abyssal cells failed, and the body completely decomposed, turning into monster mincemeat. The doctor was only slightly worried about this, because it was just an experimental body and nothing terrible happened, since they had new bodies. His assistant reported that there was a commotion outside. At this moment, a man, Lin Shuyan's father, burst into the clinic, not understanding where these people had taken his daughter, and the doctor ordered that the girl's father be brought to him. At this point, they were already bending my father over to take him out of the hospital, but the workers were ordered to retreat to take my father to the doctor. The man explained to him that his daughter was inside the laboratory and that he would now bring him to her. But when the father realized that his daughter had turned into demon clots, it shocked him. The doctor explained that something had gone wrong during the test, but he promised to compensate for the costs according to their agreement. But this would happen later, since they still needed to remove the body and study it. The man was horrified and began to beat the doctor, demanding that he stop his terrible experiments on ordinary people, and demanded that his daughter be returned to him. The doctor argued that rather than live without one limb, it would be better to sacrifice his body and contribute to society. In addition, the death benefit specified in the contract was sufficient to completely pay off all his debts. The doctor believed that he deserved gratitude, not a beating, but the man didn't care. His daughter was still a minor, and he didn't see the point in this money. The man was carried away. He promised that he would send these scumbags to hell, and they would definitely not be happy. After the man was taken away, the experiment was carried out on another girl, but no energy fluctuations were detected. They decided to wait a little longer, in which case the doctor was sure that nothing bad would happen, because this girl's brother was only a 0 level, and besides, just a garbage collector. Now seeing the hero, the doctor decided to pretend that he had not heard the name of this girl. He pretended that perhaps she was from another department. At the same time, he did not understand what had happened, because he was told that the girl's brother was a simple garbage man. But he was obviously very strong. The doctor understood that if this guy was really that strong, then he would definitely kill him, since he left this girl alone among the monsters and ran away. The doctor's behavior clearly seemed suspicious to Ye Qing, and he began to interrogate the man. He awkwardly explained that he was hearing the girl's name for the first time and was afraid that something would happen to her because so many monsters had appeared in his room that he had to run away very quickly. The doctor himself understood that he was definitely finished, but if the girl turned out to be dead, he would be able to say that he had nothing to do with it and that the monsters were to blame. But suddenly, someone stepped on the trap, so Ye Qing quickly pulled the doctor towards him to save him from the next attack. It turned out that it was not a trap and not a monster. It was Wu Ming, who finally saw the doctor and said that he came to pick him up. The doctor was incredibly scared that this man who came to save him had literally just a second ago almost cut him into pieces. Ye Qing immediately realized that the marks near the entrance to the dungeon were most likely from his sword, and was surprised that a man without a team was able to go into the deepest depths alone. The man introduced himself and explained that he was a mercenary who worked there for double pay, and for the sake of money, he could even kill several teammates, so the usual abyss was not a problem. Ye Qin explained that he didn't want to interfere with Wu Ming's mission, but he couldn't let the doctor go yet, since the doctor had promised to show him the way to his sister. Then Wu Ming explained that he had already seen one girl here. Ye Qin began to ask her in fear where she had been, while the doctor understood that he was definitely finished now, because as soon as the girl saw him here, she would definitely tell him that he was the one who had abandoned her alone. At this time, Wu Ming threw Ye Qing the Xiaoju teddy bear and explained that the girl had been attacked by monsters, and Wu Ming warned her from the very beginning that if monsters attacked her, he would not protect her, because he did not care whether she survived or not. But he also promised to convey her last words. She hopes to meet her brother near the entrance of the hospital before he comes to save her. Ye Qin was furious that the man was next to her and calmly watched her being killed and was unable to save her. Wu Ming explained that a mercenary's duty was to complete his task and receive a reward, and he didn't care about anything else. And because of his curse, those around him, were constantly dying, so he was always alone. But even after his warning, she still agreed to go with him. So to some extent, the girl herself was to blame for this. But Ye Qin demanded that the man tell him where he left the child. Wu Ming agreed to tell everything if the doctor went with him, and Ye Qing left, because Wu Ming had no sympathy for those who stood in his way. Enraged enough, Ye Qing knocked the weapon out of Wu Ming's hands and decided to attack with his poisoned blade. But instead, the man used a disarming skill on him, and then hit him with his forehead, causing Ye Qing to fly back quite far. Ye Qing was surprised by this sudden attack. He thought that his opponent was mainly only good at sword fighting, but he was also not bad at hand-to-hand combat. Wu Ming explained that during his time as a mercenary, he learned how to act and use his body in combat. But now Wu Ming was no longer going to let Ye Qing go and used Tails Breaker on his blade, causing the sword to glow with a bright magical light. Ye Qing realized that the next attack would indeed be quite powerful, but because the sword was so heavy, he might try to strike before Wu Ming could. In order to defend against the attack, Ye Qin summoned his spider monsters who tried to bind the enemy, but he easily managed to get out of this web, because some bunch of monsters couldn't defeat him, after which he decided to attack the guy. But it turned out not to be him, because the real Ye Qin had already gone behind him a long time ago. After the hero's attack, Wu Ming realized that even though Ye Qing's class was a scavenger, he was definitely not one of those incompetent people whose level was 0. The hero explained that he was definitely not inferior to Wu Ming in strength, which he had no doubt about. So he asked one last time where his sister was now. Not long before this, while the man was making his way through the crowd of monsters, the girl told him that Wu Ming was very strong. She didn't even know who was stronger, her brother or this man. She knew her brother was just a garbage man, but he worked hard every day to become stronger and change her life. But Wu Ming knew that scavengers were usually level 0, so it was unclear what kind of powers the girl was talking about. But she believed that she knew her brother better than this man, and one glance was enough for her to understand how strong her brother was. Wu Ming even wanted to look at this man, and now Wu Ming realized that the boy's sister was not mistaken. His gaze really showed that he had gone through countless trials and was worthy of respect. Ye Qin knew that he needed to gather as much information as possible before he started the fight and used the regeneration potion. But even one glance at Wu Ming left him dumbfounded, because this man was very different from all those he had met before. He had nothing but his arms and sword, not even armor, and he was attacking with all his might without even thinking about defense, which seemed like madness in this situation. Despite this, Ye Qing also had enough aces up his sleeve, so even from such strong attacks, he was able to take cover and counterattack. When Wu Ming was finally wounded, Ye Qing understood why the man didn't defend himself at all, because instead of blood, he had sand. After this blow, he became truly enraged, so he began to fight even faster. Ye Qing tried to immobilize him with his transformation skill. But instead, the man cut through this skill and dispelled it. Finally, Ye Qing realized that Wu Ming was an immortal. The man explained that the abyss could grant things that modern technology could not comprehend, and that he was now observing something more than just profession, stats, and equipment. It was a curse, a divine punishment that had to be endured in order to gain unprecedented power. But God suddenly noticed him, and perhaps for the sake of amusement, wanted to laugh at his fate, and gave him the power he so desired. However, no one warned him that God would take away his most precious thing, and so he became a monster. Looking at this, the doctor realized that the rumors that ordinary people in the abyss can become monsters are true. After all, the undead have a super powerful feature. Until their energy is depleted, they can continue to resurrect. Wu Ming explained that he had a bad reputation for killing all his allies because all of his allies and teammates always died. As a result, he became an outcast, and although he had learned the price of eternal life. In addition, at this moment, Wu Ming began to attack using Death Wish. The damage he received was reduced, and the damage dealt was increased by 100%. Ye Qing knew that in the case of the curse, this could be considered cheating, but he managed to escape in time using his Bloody Nightmare clone. After which he used his golden shield in order to be able to defend himself from the following attacks. When Ye Qin was convinced that he was truly dead, he decided to use the Soul Reaper artifact. Ye Qing explained that if someone died from this skill, then Despair Reaping would be triggered and their HP and MP would slowly recover. And since Wu Ming's body is dead, the skill will trigger after every hit, because the reason why the undead can live forever is because of magical power. Wu Ming was surprised that Ye Qin figured it out so quickly. He realized that his ability to analyze was much better than that of ordinary people. The hero knew that for every riddle there is a way to solve it. A person can have great power but have a fragile body. Everyone has their weaknesses. And Wu Ming, although he did not wear any armor and preferred to rush into the attack without a single thought of defense, sacrificing himself to mislead the enemies, forcing them to fight to the death. Ye Qin was right. Everyone had weak points, but he wanted to know what Ye Qin's weak point was. He had everything: strength, agility, intelligence, body, will, luck. Among the 6 main characteristics, there is always one that is given less attention. But Ye Qin was different from ordinary people. He always had everything pumped up equally, but he decided not to engage in further conversation. It was clear that while Wu Ming's wounds were not completely healed, he could take advantage of this chance. The hero was determined to win, and Wu Ming was also determined to win, regardless of the enemy's fancy tricks, powerful strength, or even underestimated trash talent. Wu Ming was willing to try everything to discover his opponent's weakness, and Ye Qin continued to attack in order to slow down Wu Ming's regeneration, tricking him into gradually exhausting his strength until he died completely. He used Reaper of Death again, which this time managed to completely cut off his arm. Then Wu Ming finally realized that Ye Qing's weakness was not in battle at all, but somewhere outside the battlefield, and at that moment, he turned his attention to the teddy bear. And just as Ye Qing was distracted by him, Wu Ming managed to get close enough that it seemed like he could kill the guy. But he explained that he didn't feel sympathy for anyone. But Ye Qin was different. He had the character of a living person. So he offered a choice. Either he let the doctor go with him, or he went to his sister, because his sister was actually alive, and he took the teddy bear simply as proof that he knew her location. A few hours ago, a monster grabbed Xiaoju and began to strangle her, and she understood that there was no help for her. After all, Wu Ming immediately said that he would not protect her since she was not his client. He did not care whether she survived or not. Besides, she remembered her brother, who believed in her and promised that he would definitely do everything to cure her. Then, dying, the girl realized that she did not want to be a burden to her brother, and her body suddenly began to glow with a strange energy. She asked God to bless her to become stronger, and at that moment she was able to awaken herself and discover the profession of a transformer within herself. She eventually became a giant teddy bear that began to smash the monsters one by one and viciously tore them apart. When Wu Ming saw her, he remembered something he had once heard, that ordinary people who successfully underwent abyssal cell induction were more likely to awaken their profession. He realized that this girl was most likely one of the victims that the man who opened the abyss had spoken of. The man prepared for battle, as he had heard that the changes caused by the cells of the abyss caused the host to lose consciousness and become like a monster. But instead, the girl did not lose consciousness, began to cry, not understanding what had happened to her and why she had become taller, and could also walk and felt strange. Wu Min was in shock and couldn't believe that she was still conscious, but the girl introduced herself to him, and then he realized that she was definitely okay. After which she looked out the nearest window and realized that she began to look like a teddy bear, but she was very scared that now she did not look like a person at all. She didn't know how to show herself to her brother in this form, and asked Wu Ming to tell her how to return to her previous body. But he did not know how. Besides, she revealed her profession, unknown to him. But he warned that if the girl did not want to go further with him, then he would continue his mission and finish it. She then handed the man a teddy bear and asked him to give it to his brother, explaining that she would need some time to gather herself mentally and meet him. Now Wu Ming explained that if they continued to fight, his position would be disadvantageous. Although he wanted to see Ye Qing's full strength, there was no reason for them to fight now. He explained that the doctor behind him was to blame for everything, since the appearance of this abyss was, to a greater or lesser extent, his merit. Wu Ming's employer was the same father who explained that he was going to use the key to open the energy of the abyss, which would suck everything in the hospital into a complete abyss. However, given that the doctor is somehow connected to influential hunters, a rescue team will definitely come for him. He wanted to make sure that this man would remain in the abyss forever. He wants not only to trample all the results of his experiments, but also to make him pay for what happened to his daughter. Wu Ming asked the man if he knew how much it would cost, but in this matter Wu Ming could claim any amount of money. The doctor explained that the man's daughter was incurable, and he had offered compensation, and had already sent it to the father, so he did not consider himself guilty, since the man was only wasting money supporting his daughter's existence. Ye Qin was clearly angry at this information and demanded an explanation about his sister. The doctor explained that she had ended up in his department by accident, and he had no connection with her, especially if she had been the subject of an experiment. It was her personal desire, and he could compensate for everything with money. Without listening to the end, Ye Qin immediately hit the man in the face, and the force of this blow was enough for the man to immediately fall down and start shaking in convulsions. The doctor tried to justify himself by saying that no one needs a disabled person who can't walk. If he had used it, it would have brought much more benefit to society. Moreover, she would make sacrifices for scientific research and would make her contribution. Ye Qin was so angry that he even summoned his garbage-absorbing system, causing it to grab the man, after which this huge hand hit the man hard on the ground, and then Ye Qin began to deal with him. Picking up the man, he explained that he was useless trash and would remain so even after death, and then threw the man towards Wu Ming. The hero asked him to deal with him, and Wu Ming happily realized that he and this guy had reached an agreement. After Ye Qin left, Wu Ming calmly reminded him that his duty as a mercenary was to carry out orders, and the girl's father wished for the doctor to die here. The doctor promised that whatever his reward was, he could pay double, but Wu Ming clearly didn't care, because he was going to deal with this man here and now. And looking back at the portal where Ye Qing had gone, he knew that next time they would definitely have a grand battle. Ye Qin finally met his sister, who was hiding behind the wall in fear and did not want to show herself to her brother like this. Ye Qin calmly looked at her and apologized for coming to save her so late. The girl was very ashamed that her brother always risked his life for her. Then she apologized for always causing him a lot of trouble, after which she began to cry and explain that she had turned into a monster and did not know what to do because she had always relied on her brother. But she wanted to become as strong as he was, and she wanted to get out of her wheelchair and stop burdening him. But instead of her legs working, she turned into this creature. The hero consoled his sister by explaining that many creatures that looked like people were much more monsters than Xiaoju, because even in the body of a monster, she was still just as good and sweet inside. In addition, since his job was to fight monsters, he was miraculously able to distinguish his sister from the others by appearance, and looking around, he realized that the girl was able to deal with many monsters and became much stronger. She awkwardly explained that it wasn't her, because at that moment she had only transformed, and someone else had dealt with everyone else. At that moment, while they were laughing and having fun, the girl was able to take on her true form. She began to look around herself in fear, not understanding how she returned back to her body, and Ye Qing explained that transformation requires constant consumption of magical power, and when the mana is exhausted, a person transforms back. After which he congratulated his sister on the fact that she also became very cool and gained her abilities. Suddenly the girl started asking if Ye Qin had met a strange guy here who wanted to meet him in person and talk about something. Moreover, this man said that Wu Ming would probably be very hard to kill, just like him. The guy smiled awkwardly and explained that even if he met this man, they would hardly have anything to talk about. The next morning, Ye Qing's peaceful sleep was suddenly interrupted by an urgent call from a worried Zhou Guk. In response to her sincere concern, Ye Qin decided to honestly explain his difficult situation. The urgent need to make money quickly forced him to act alone. Zhou Guk urged him to be more careful and prudent, especially considering his young age and responsibility towards his younger sister. After this emotional conversation ended, Ye Qing's attention was drawn to the long-awaited notification of a hefty 2.5 million remittance from Liu Xingran, accompanied by a detailed report of the sale. Ye Qing was relieved that he had trusted Liu Xingran to sell the loot, knowing that her high status automatically gave legitimacy to all transactions. During their recent nighttime meeting, the inquisitive Liu Xingran persistently questioned the guy about the origin of such valuable resources. Despite Ye Qing's attempts to explain the findings as ordinary garbage collection in the abyss, the perceptive girl easily read the omissions in his words, although she did not press him with questions. Ye Qin decided to limit himself to a brief statement that high-level items might attract unwanted attention to his humble person. Liu Xingran was amazed by the boy's extraordinary physical strength, which she accidentally discovered after a playful blow. In response to her undisguised surprise, Ye Qin reluctantly told her about the mysterious tests that had radically changed his physical abilities, which prompted the girl to intriguing thoughts about the nature of his unusual profession. Karina, after analyzing the situation, came to the conclusion that the garbageman profession could have been recently integrated into the system, which explained the lack of the ability to level up in the traditional way. Driven by the desire to help and protect the interests of her unusual friend, she suggested that Ye Qing take the official test for a hunter's license from the World Commission to legalize his activities. Ye Qing, realizing the benefits of gaining official hunter status that would allow him to explore any abyss without hindrance, thought for the first time about the risks of his previous illegal forays. The girl explained in detail that the test to obtain hunter status is relatively simple. All that is required is to demonstrate basic abyssal survival skills and secure the support of a reliable sponsor. To Ye Qin's surprise, she volunteered to be his guarantor, wanting to repay his previous help with kindness. The sudden appearance of Xiao Ju with a bag of freshly cooked food interrupted the memories. To her brother's amazement, Xiao Ju showed amazing progress in her recovery. She was able to get up from her wheelchair on her own, using a unique technique of concentrating strength in her knees. An excited Xiao Ju shared that her fear of transforming into a bear again prompted her to experiment with concentrating her power, which unexpectedly resulted in significant improvement. But soon the brother had to leave, leaving his sister alone because he went to take an exam. Upon arriving at the exam venue, Ye Qin found himself surrounded by many ambitious hunters. Suddenly he heard the voice of an excited friend who could not believe that he had finally decided to get a license. During their conversation, The hero learned that the guy followed his advice and diligently practiced close combat and was already successful. In response, the hero explained that he had come to obtain a license in order to legalize his expeditions. It became obvious that a hero who received the status of a hunter would be able to achieve great progress and could even become one of the best hunters. Suddenly, a man appeared among the hunters, who stood out especially because he belonged to the elite caste of those chosen by God. Meeting the owner of the God-chosen profession did not leave much of an impression on Ye Qing, considering his previous acquaintance with Liu Xingran, who also belonged to the prestigious S-class. The self-confident chosen one, not paying attention to anyone, approached the registration desk, while the hero was thinking about the professions chosen by God. The man demanded that the certificate be issued immediately, clearly expecting special privileges due to his elite status. He wanted to get not just a certificate, but a certificate that would give him enormous privileges over other hunters. This clearly caused a mixed reaction among the hunters present. The sudden appearance of the mysterious magician girl instantly attracted the attention of the arrogant chosen one. The man, without wasting any time, began to demonstrate his dubious seduction skills. Annoyed by the inappropriate flirting, the girl demonstrated an impressive mastery of fire magic, throwing the annoying suitor several dozen meters away with a powerful explosion. The enraged hunter, having come to his senses after the humiliating flight and subsequent extinguishing, promised to take cruel revenge on the impudent girl for the public humiliation. Ye Qin, showing his best efforts, tried to resolve the conflict by calling on his angry chosen one to remain calm. But security appeared in time and wanted to take the hero and the hunter away. But the girl admitted her guilt in using force in time, which helped diffuse the tense situation, preventing further escalation of the confrontation. When the girl explained her intention to obtain a support mage certificate, the examiner asked her to demonstrate her level of magical power using a special measuring crystal. An unexpected surge of energy during the test of the girl's magical power, which caused a bright glow and electrical discharges from the crystal, forced the examiners to conduct an additional check of her identity. Discouraged by this turn of events, the girl tried to smooth things over by offering to repeat the test. The second time, her test passed without any abnormal manifestations, to her obvious relief.